Hi, welcome to the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Summit. If you've already been in sessions, I hope that you've been learning a lot so far and having a great time. And if you're just now joining, welcome. I hope you're taking a lot away and also getting a chance to recharge as you reflect on your year so that you can take some really great stuff with you into August or September. My name is Christina Andrade Melly. I teach sophomore and senior English in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am a 2018 graduate of the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Club. I'm also the 2023 Missouri Teacher of the Year. And a lot of my success with my students, my colleagues, my community, I credit to being really, really reflective about my teaching, about my time, and where I'm putting my energy in my career and in my life. I am also the mother of a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so there's tons of activity happening in my house all of the time. And really taking the chance to focus in on how I'm using that time makes a big difference in how relaxed I am, in how much I can get done, and just in how my classroom runs. One of the things that I really took away from the Workweek Club was being reflective about my grading. There are some great materials in the January section, if you're already a member, that helped me with this. And specifically as an English teacher and a teacher of writing, these approaches, breaking student writing and responding to student writing into 3 different approaches, has helped me be really reflective about what I'm spending my time on and when within our processes. If you'd like to follow along in our presentation, there are going to be resources to click. There are going to be things to open. So you've got a bit link in the middle of the screen. The QR code is there as well. So you're very welcome to jump on in and join us that way. The first thing that I want to start with is giving a little bit of space for you to think about what grading means in this current moment for you. So if you're a notebook person, you're welcome to grab a notebook. If you're a Google Doc person, just to jot this in a Google Doc. If you're watching this at a later time and not live, this would be a great moment to pause and just take a moment to consider, what do you do when you grade student writing? Or what does it mean when you sit down to grade? I think that the way we consider this question has a huge impact on whether our grading practices help our classrooms run in a more enjoyable and efficient and effective way for our students, or whether the grading is the thing that gets in the way of the enjoyment. Right? I think that all of us as teachers probably feel that way, at least at some times. The person who's thinking I am really borrowing from heavily in this is a teacher of writing named Professor Peter Elbow. And his stance is that assessment really drives what happens in the classroom. That if we're looking at that end product, so much of what we do in the classroom is going to move towards that end product. And so thinking about it at the beginning can help us shape our practice in ways that make it more enjoyable for all of us. So his answer to this question of what do we do when we grade really breaks down to 3 elements. That these 3 different things we're doing and sometimes combining in ways when we grade, but we can be much more efficient if we break it down to just one at a time, sometimes 2. So he sets these out as ranking, evaluating, and liking. Now, ranking is going to be what we think of, I would say, as traditional grading. It is putting a score. Here is your numerical or here is your letter value on the final product. This is it. We think of that as objective, but when it comes to writing, there's always going to be that element of my personal perception of a student's writing, my understanding of their process, my thoughts on their approach. And so whether it's truly objective or not is, I think, kind of a tough point to make. Ranking is also going to do with approving that final product. There is not usually that built-in opportunity for revision, unless, of course, the teacher offers retakes or resubmissions or that kind of thing. But still, the grade that it gets is the grade that stands unless a student loops back in that process in your classroom. And finally, it's also outcome-based. That ranking in Elbow's sort of framework, that's based on the final paper. It's based on the product. It is not bringing into account any of that process or some of the pieces along the way that might have happened. The second thing that I think is where I spend a lot of my time is evaluating. That's going to be analyzing, not just putting a number on this assignment. Is it a 1 or a 4 or a 100 or a 96 or a 23? But really saying, how does this meet or not meet our class expectations? It also recognizes that that process is going to be subjective. In evaluating student writing and giving feedback, a lot of us will say, I'm reading this as, or I don't quite get this part yet, right? We understand that I'm experiencing your writing in this particular moment. There's sort of not that attempt to say this is the thing that it is always, but it's a moment that we are sharing, and it's that process of communication. That feedback is going to be descriptive, right? It's a chance for me to continue sharing examples. It's a chance to continue saying, here's how you can reach that next step. And it is process-based. I think there's a lot of ways that we can organize our classroom that we build this into the way that we work. And that's going to make things much more effective and efficient for all of us. This last item that I'm talking about here is actually what Elbow puts first in the process. And so we're going to dig into the practical pieces of it more first. But really, something that we should be doing is liking, noticing things in student writing, enjoying student writing. This is really a moment to give feedback that is very personalized, that tells our students we see them. I love this way that Peter Elbow puts it, that liking student writing is seeing what is potentially good. We have all read papers that are very challenging and have a long way to go before they may be totally good. But finding those kernels, finding those moments maybe that are emotionally striking for a student, or the places they're trying a skill, even if they don't quite have it yet, those are really those moments that we can encourage growth in our students and make a connection with those young writers. And in talking about liking, that really becomes something that's classroom culture based, that by being seen by your classmates, by your instructor, that can be an incredibly powerful motivating force. I'm sure we can all think of professors or instructors that we've had that we said, oh, they really like me. They think that I have got it. And we really worked much harder in those classes versus the professors that didn't care one way or the other, or really had this sort of kill your darlings approach where they were really tough on our work. And it can be hard to get motivated in those classes, unless you're vindictive and you say, I will do my best in this class that I possibly can. So in terms of the practical elements of this, of ranking, evaluating, and liking, I really want us to start with this idea of liking. And these are some approaches that you can use and that I use in my classroom as I am trying to enjoy those student pieces. There are some sentence starters that I kind of think, or that will run through my mind. These are ones that Elbow suggests, the first half of this list, of what does that student writing say and what does it almost say? I love starting off comments with ideas like, I'm reading this as, right? Or what I get from this is. Or even my favorite comment in the world down here at the bottom, which is tell me more or write more like this. It's a chance to highlight the places that students are doing something well. And it sort of serves that dual purpose. It encourages them and tells them, I do have the ability to do this. And I have models in my own writing that I can use to continue. One thing that you can do as you're liking, sort of doing that non-critical responding, you're very welcome to do by clicking on the student exemplars here. These are real examples from my sophomores. We just finished state testing season, and this was one of their last practices before we went into that full-on writing. One of the things that Google Docs has, which I love for liking student writing, is emoji reactions. As I pull this up, and you're very welcome to do this as well or use these as exemplars, I can highlight a section and say that this is a great hook, or, I like this, or this is something funny. I can just swing right over here to the emoji reactions on Google Docs and add something in. This is a very fast way to give feedback on student writing. And it's a language that our students speak. It's a language we speak too, right? And so I think that this is a very quick way that technology can assist us, along with things that Angela suggests in other weeks of the work week, right? Things like having a comment bank that you can copy paste, or having sentence starters that you can add in, right? Those are things that can be really useful and help you like that student writing in a way that's very efficient, right? That this is a great way to encourage the writing process as they go. As we move from liking, right, that can be one sort of distinct exercise that we use when we're looking at student writing. Evaluating, I think, is the one that does take the most time. A lot of times we are grading when we ought to be evaluating, that we're putting a number on something and robbing students of that opportunity to continue improving themselves, or to really understand, oh, this is what I need to do. This is how I can do it. But the challenge with evaluating and giving that kind of descriptive feedback is it takes a really, really long time. So as you're working through student writing, I would really think about what are the things that you need to evaluate or give that feedback on, because it absolutely should not be every piece of writing. You might not even be giving every student feedback on the same piece. Sometimes when I'm reading through, as we're in a process essay, I will actually choose one exemplar out of my students that is showing what I want them to be doing, and we'll all discuss it on the board together and say, this is a strong example. The freebie tip that's only slightly related to what we're talking about here, if you're using AI can be a great place to generate weak examples. Strong ones too, but I like using real writing for that. Just philosophically, I appreciate that. But you can actually generate some anonymous examples of errors that you see and have students provide that evaluatory feedback, or to say, oh, not like that, like this. Some other ways that you can speed up that evaluation process and give students feedback are here on the screen. The top item is what Elbow calls a grid. This would be something that he would write out longhand. I would prefer to print it on a sticky note, or have something I can copy paste onto a Google Doc or onto a comment, where you just have a weak, okay, and strong, and then a level for each item that you are evaluating or practicing. Put a check in each column, and that can be a very fast way to give feedback. That shouldn't be the only way that you're giving feedback, but I think that that's an option you can use. Additionally, single point rubrics are one of my favorite things. I think it's really easy for students to read and to understand what the goal is, that what meets expectations. This is the target. This is what we're going towards, especially if you're a school that's starting in competency-based learning, right? Kind of looking at what we will say is a proficient standard. I'm intentionally not using a letter grade or a number there. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you can tell students where the target is, and then they get the freedom to say what goes above and beyond, or how they can excel beyond it. I can fill in feedback, anything students did in their organization that was amazing, that was better than this, that, oh, I love that you incorporated dialogue. I love that you had a paragraph that was only a sentence long because you really wanted it to hit us. I can add that feedback in just a tiny little box. In the same way, if students aren't quite hitting the target yet, I have one place that I can add feedback that's tailored to that student, just a sentence or two saying, this is where you still need to continue working. This is something that you can customize to anything that you're working on in writing. And I've found that students kind of enjoy it as well. It's an easy thing to read, and they're not sort of as overwhelmed by the wall of text that sometimes a completely filled out rubric can look like. These are some options that I've really enjoyed. There's a lot more about these in the materials in January week 2, especially when it comes to getting efficient about these, especially when you want to start looking at how students can engage in this. You might look at week 4, right? That there's a lot of expansion you can do with these things, but these are some basic ways you can start. So the last thing that we can do, right, this last activity that you might want to think about and separate out when you're grading is that ranking. Putting the number grade or the letter grade on it, we know that when we do that, students walk away. And sometimes that's a relief. I am done with this paper. A C is the best thing that I can get. I'm over it. That's fine. But I think the more that we can give students room to practice by incorporating some low stakes writing and only grading things selectively, really only picking those assignments or those writing pieces or those projects that are accurate representations of what students can truly do. This is what Angela calls a true and important assessment of students' learning. And I think that important really is key. There's a lot of things that we grade that are not important, but the pressure to sort of generate grades or to pay off for that work, right? If grades the currency of the classroom, I think that that can be really tempting. But the more that we can pull back on it, I think the more efficiently we can run our classroom and the more we can actually enjoy the writing process, because we don't have to put a grade on everything. The grids or the single point rubrics that we had on the last page, to combine the ranking and the evaluating, I could just put a number on those. I intentionally separated them here just to make sure that we're thinking about those as separate activities, but those are two that you can combine as you need to. Something that Elbow suggests is grading with a contract, and if that's something you're interested in looking into, the slides all have the links to that. You can also look at some peer or self-grading. The January week 4 materials have a lot on that if you're a Work Week Club member, so you can find some more information there. And the closing thing that I want to sort of add to your head, just to think about, to chew on a little bit, because this will be a whole nother presentation, is that as you are grading, as you're scoring and ranking, that you make sure you're doing that in a mathematically accurate way. If we start thinking about differences between grades, I think it would be really hard for most of us to definitively tell you the difference between a 97 and a 98 out of 100 points. Is that one misplaced comma? Is that two wrongly cited pieces of evidence? I don't know. Is it neither? Is it both? It might be a lot easier to tell the difference between a 4 and a 3 on a 4-point scale, right? I super got it, I kind of get it, I don't got it, right? Like that becomes much easier, I think, for students and teachers to articulate. You might also think about the difference between having 50 points worth of failure, where we only have 10 points for the other letter grades. This would be a whole larger conversation. There's a lot of research and a lot of work on equity within grading that I'd encourage you to look into. There are some resources that are linked, but as we're talking about assessment, I think that this is an important conversation and an important thing for us to think about as teachers. So the closing thought that I want to leave you on is, as you're going back to your classroom in the fall, thinking about not just what is grading to you holistically, but what does grading mean in this precise moment for this piece, for this class, at this part of our process. There are going to be times that you need to rank, and that's fine. But there may also be times that you get more bang for your buck by liking student writing, by enjoying it first and finding that good, or by finding time to give that feedback. You don't necessarily have to do all three at one time, and you might be able to get a lot more enjoyment and efficiency out of your time in the classroom just by reflecting on which one you need at a given time. If you have follow-up questions, I'd love to be of help. I'd love to talk to you more about writing. That's one of my favorite things to do. So my contact information is here on the screen, as well as the link to the presentation. I appreciate your time today. I wish you the most fantastic summer and an excellent rest of the summit. Take care.